LeBron James is going to say whatever LeBron James wants. That's what LeBron James is. He is, and I'll say it again, LJA, the LeBron James Association. When LeBron James speaks, everybody listens. Giannis coming out and saying, as a jokingly expression, that he would score 275, not 250, that was a joke. I don't think Giannis, in the right mind, would actually come out and just throw the 1970s under the bus. But LeBron James has come out numerous amount of times saying that he's the greatest basketball player ever. It's not even close. And you forget about Michael Jordan. I just watched Air again. I don't know if anybody's seen the movie 2023 that came out about the sneakers, the Nike sneakers and the Air Jordans. He was really revolutionized the sneaker deals that players are getting today. And that was his mother and Jordan doing what he did. LeBron James has revolutionized the game athletically, and he's gifted in so many ways than one. But when LeBron James comes out and makes stupid, obviously dramatic statements like this, it should piss you off. It should piss you off. And I'm going to say this because, I mean, we've been speaking about the Stephen A. Smith thing, and then obviously the arguments behind it. Everybody's talking about it. But the fact is, you cannot compare eras. But if you look at the 1970s and you look at the game today, even if you compare the 1970s to the 1980s, they're uncomparable. And then when you look at the 1990s, where I thought basketball was at its all-time highest, and I'm going to say this, there were more superstars in the 90s, early 90s and late 90s than there were in any era. And I'm going to explain why. I mean, if you look at the 1992 Dream Team, if you look at those players, I remember a lot of people saying that John Stockton was too small to play in the NBA. Well, he still leads the league in assists in his career. I think LeBron James is coming up to that, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, but so was John Stockton a superstar?
Yeah, he was. He was a superstar.
Everyone consider him a top 5 point guard ever.
He's a superstar. Karl Malone was a superstar. The mailman, I mean, if you get a nickname, you're a superstar. Clyde the Glide, Air Jordan, Charles Fatty, I used to call him. I mean, that wasn't his nickname, but I used to call him Charles Fatty.
He's eating steak with Zion.
I mean, honestly, every one of them. The Admiral, Patrick Ewing, the captain. I mean, every single one of these guys had a nickname on that team. Even Christian Laettner, who never even played, was arguably the greatest college basketball player at the time of all time. When you look at what he's won as a champion, 2-time back-to-back champions, who was the best player on that team? It was him. And then it was Bobby Hurley and then Grant Hill and all the other players that they had on that team. But Christian Laettner was the best player on that Duke Blue Devil team. And that's why he made the team, because Isaiah Thomas was never going to make that team as long as Michael Jordan was still alive. But if you look at transcending players, there are a lot of them now. If you look at the game now and what it is, when you talk about John Morant, you talk about
Steph Curry.
Well, Steph Curry, he revolutionized the three, which to me has ruined the game in just as many ways that you want to say he's upgraded the game. He hasn't helped the game as much as you people think. I know a lot of people are going to sit here and say, well, it does help the game because it makes the game more fun. Really? It makes young kids go out there and chuck up threes. I look at the game and what LeBron James is saying, and LeBron James is going to say a lot of crazy things. He doesn't respect the past. And I'm going to say this right now. Everybody calls him the modern-day Magic Johnson. He's better than Magic Johnson. And I know Magic Johnson, if he's listening to this, probably doesn't want to hear it. But I think Magic Johnson would honestly tell you when you're trying to compare superstar after superstar from each era, he's going to tell you right now the best player of the last 15 years, even with Kobe in the league, as much as he doesn't want to admit it, is LeBron James. There's no argument to that. He has been the face of the NBA. There's a lot of great, like you said, Steph Curry. Kevin Durant. There are a lot of great players in the league. Now they've all become more shooters than they understand the game of basketball as a whole. Now, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, when he came into the league, obviously he had a different name, Mr. Cinder, and then he changed his name to Kareem. But when he came into the league, he really brought the skyhook. Remember that? He brought the skyhook to the league. And now transcending the game for big men. And he really athletically gifted big men. And LeBron James has changed the game too by, when he came into the league, because of his size and his ability to go up and down the court and his energy and his power of the game, and then developing a shot the way he has. Remember, when he came into the NBA, He wasn't a great free throw shooter. He was horrible. I think
Shaky 3-point shooter, too.
Yeah, but his free throws were horrible. I think in high school, I think he was like 58 or 60% free throw shooter in high school. LeBron James opens his mouth too much. I don't know why he brings up the past. If Tim Hardaway, and I would love to hear what Timmy thought about that, because we all know when Anthony Edwards opened his mouth, Tim Hardaway had a lot to say about Anthony Edwards and what he shouldn't be doing. But now you have LeBron James, who's breaking all the records. And Tim Hardaway came out and said if Anthony played in the 90s, they would knock him flat on his ass. Yep. Now, is LeBron James as proficient as he has been in the NBA if he played in the 90s? I don't know. Because there were a lot of athletic guys in the league, not as athletic as him, but the athletic game and the gym time and the weight rooms that they had when LeBron James came in the league was a lot better than it was in the 90s. It was transitioning in the 90s, and the game changed. If you remember, when LeBron James got drafted in 2004, the game started transitioning into an offensive game, and they took away hand checking in the late 90s. In the late 90s, they took away hand checking, which changed the game. It opened up the game for offensives. If you look at the NFL right now, and I don't know if anybody remembers the NFL of the 90s, and I do very, very well. I remember the cornerbacks like Deion Sanders. Everybody keeps saying Deion Sanders is the greatest corner of all time. Deion Sanders played at a time where you can pull on people's jerseys, pull on their hands, pull on their hips. When Deion Sanders came into the game, you can do those things to wide receivers. Could Deion Sanders do what he did in the 90s if he played in the new era of game, where you can't really pull and yank and horse collar players like some of those corners were doing in those years? The answer would be no. And that's the difference. The eras change the way the game is played. Look at the NHL. Look at the game. I mean, remember two-line pass? They took two-line passes out of the game. Why? Because they thought it would open up the game. That didn't open up the game. You know what opened up the game? They opened up the nets. They made the rinks bigger. And they added, if you have a faster team, you have a better chance of putting the puck in the net than the slower team, the more influential, dominant players like Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux. Now, if Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky were playing in their prime now, would they be as good? That's what people were saying. Do I think they would? Yeah, because I think obviously how talented they would have obviously mimicked the style of game that they have right now in the NHL. So I would think that Mario Lemieux, for the size that he has, he was pretty fast. I think he would have obviously evolutionized the big man in the 6'6" power forward for an NHL player. If Mario Lemieux, because of how talented, could you imagine Brett Hull in the game now, the way the game is played? Brett Hull was a vicious player. The guy hit. He did everything. If he brought that kind of game to the NHL now and just added a little bit more training and maybe not drank as much as he did when he played hockey, I think Brett Hull would be as efficient as any of the top superstars in the league now. Brett Hull had a knack for putting the puck in the net. Keith Tkachuk had a knack. Look at his sons. I'm going to tell you guys something. Matthew Tkachuk and Brady Tkachuk, they could speak and they could say whatever they want. As far as talent is concerned, I watched Keith Tkachuk come into the NHL. I watched him his whole career. Keith Tkachuk is a better player than Matthew Tkachuk and Brady Tkachuk. Take that for anything you want to sell to anybody out there as a hockey fan. Keith Tkachuk will never admit that. But when I watch Keith Tkachuk play, he revolutionized the power forward American player. There was never an American player as good as he was at the power forward position because he was so good at using his body and his strength to get to the net and put the puck in the net. He was special. I mean, does anybody remember Keith Primo? Does anybody remember him as a hockey player? Keith Primo was a Canadian player. People forget him, all right? He was so efficient. Not only could he fight, he was nasty, and he knew how to put the puck in there. He always found a way. And for a guy his size, had a tremendous amount of speed. If Keith Primo played in the game now, could you imagine how good Keith Primo would be with the training that these guys have and the opportunity that these guys have to train in so many different places? There's so many ice rinks. In those times, there were not enough ice rinks. So, I mean, honestly, the games have changed. I don't like that LeBron James, and he's done this many, many times over the last couple of years. He's thrown players and former players under the rug. He's thrown them under the rug. And why? I don't know. Now, he does believe he's the greatest basketball player of all time. But when you put your name in comparison to guys like Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, and those kind of players where they've revolutionized their positions, well, then you best believe to know that they're going to come out and stick up for themselves. I don't agree with anything that LeBron James says, because I think if LeBron James went and played in the 90s, I think he would have been as efficient, but I don't know if he would be doing what he is doing right now in the NBA, because you can't cry to the referees like he does now. If LeBron James played in the 90s and he was crying to the referees, you would get a technical. They would throw you out of the frigging game. And as a matter of fact, go ask Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley what they used to do when players were bitching to the referees. The other players, and the next time they go down the court, they're knocking you flat on your ass, and you're not getting a foul. So it was a more vicious game. And LeBron James saying, and by the way, LeBron James, Steph Curry wouldn't be able to chuck up threes like he was. He would never be able to. Michael Jordan would have stuffed his ass. Michael Jordan would have played up on him, put a hand on him, and make him try to make a play on him. And this is a guy who's an all-world, all-defensive player. This guy was Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, MVP. This guy is he is the greatest basketball player, one of the greatest defensive players at the guard position of all time. And for LeBron James to even mention this just shows you how dumb and stupid the man really is.